The sky over Earth burned with the brilliant glow of Serac warships, descending like a storm of fire and metal. The once great cities of Earth, now reduced to rubble, stood as a grim reminder of humanity's struggle. The Serac Dominion, a galaxy-spanning empire of ruthless alien conquerors, had wiped out Earth's defenses with chilling precision. With their cities crumbling and their military shattered, humanity's last hope rested in a dark corner of the ruins. Captain Sarah Grant stood among the broken remnants of Washington, D.C., surveying the battlefield. The streets were silent now, save for the distant thrum of an enemy warship's engines. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the horizon, seeking any sign of resistance. In the heart of the ruins, buried deep beneath the shattered Capitol building, Grant and her small team had discovered a hidden chamber, an ancient facility, long thought lost. There, buried beneath the dust of centuries, lay something that could change the course of the war, an unfinished weapon, a relic from a time when humanity had stood stronger. "Captain, over here," called Lieutenant James Welder, one of the few surviving members of the Earth Defense Force. He waved from the entrance of the chamber, where the dark outline of a massive device loomed. Its shape was alien, unfamiliar, and yet somehow human in design. It was enormous, roughly the size of a small building, with wires and conduits snaking across its surface. At first glance, it looked like a forgotten piece of ancient technology, but there was something about it that felt alive. Grant strode toward the device, her boots crunching over the debris as she knelt beside it. Her fingers traced the strange symbols etched into its surface, the lines worn smooth with age. "This is it," she muttered. "The Serac didn't just attack us for our resources. They knew about this. Can we get it online?" Welder asked, his voice tinged with both awe and anxiety. The weapon had the potential to destroy an entire fleet, but it was incomplete. Its systems were locked, its activation process unknown. The pieces were scattered, hidden in facilities across the globe. Grant studied the device for a moment before answering. "We don't have time to figure it out on our own. We need to gather the best minds we have left. The scientists, the engineers. We can't afford to waste any more time. If this weapon works, it could be our last chance." The thought hung in the air like a weight, heavy and oppressive. Earth's defenses were obliterated, and every second counted. The Serac fleet had already begun its final approach to Earth's orbit, and in a matter of hours, the remaining pockets of resistance would be crushed beneath their relentless onslaught. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook as the distant hum of an enemy warship reverberated through the ruins. The sky darkened with the shadow of the approaching fleet. Earth's last hope was slipping away. "Captain," Welder said, voice tight with urgency, "what do we do now?" Grant stood tall, her gaze never leaving the weapon in front of her. Her heart pounded in her chest, not with fear, but with the sharp clarity of a single, undeniable truth. Earth would not fall without a fight. "We fight," she said, her voice resolute. "We assemble every last person who can stand. We'll finish this weapon, and we'll make them regret ever setting foot on our planet." As the countdown to Earth's destruction began, Captain Grant and her team made their preparations. The final stand was about to begin, and humanity's fate rested in the hands of those who refused to give up. Above Earth, the Serac fleet loomed, casting an eerie shadow over the planet. The warships were massive, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars like predatory beasts waiting to strike. From the flagship, the tyrant the Serac Emperor Karvik gazed down at the chaos below with cold, calculating eyes. His species had conquered countless worlds, enslaved entire civilizations, and Earth would be no different. To him, it was merely a matter of time. The Serac believed that humanity, with its primitive technology and fractured defenses, would crumble before their might. Karvik had no fear of Earth's so-called resistance. He had seen them falter time and time again. His generals were ready to wipe out the remnants of Earth's last defense, and then, finally, the planet would be his. It was a plan centuries in the making. General Gorak. Karvik's voice thundered through the command deck of the Tyrant. Prepare for the final phase. Earth's resistance is nothing more than a nuisance. I tire of this prolonged game. Destroy their last forces. Leave no trace. Korak, a towering figure with scales like dark stone and eyes like burning coals, bowed low in deference to his emperor. The Sirak general had earned his reputation by annihilating entire civilizations, leaving only memories of ash and ruin in his wake. He regarded humans with disdain, their stubbornness irritating but ultimately futile. In his mind, they were already defeated. "Your will be done, my emperor," Korak replied, his voice a low growl. "I will ensure Earth's utter subjugation." But Karvik's arrogance blinded him to one critical fact. He underestimated humanity's will to fight. While the Sirak considered the humans a dying race, Earth's resistance had only just begun to awaken. On the ground, Captain Sarah Grant was far from defeated. She and her team, now joined by the remnants of Earth's military, were hard at work, deciphering the ancient weapon systems. Though they faced overwhelming odds, they refused to bow to the Sirak's perceived superiority. Grant paced in front of a holographic map of the planet. The Sirak had begun their final bombardment, striking Earth's remaining military strongholds, one by one. But Grant had a plan, a dangerous one. She would lead a team to infiltrate a Sirak supply ship, a heavily guarded vessel that contained crucial alien technology. If they could extract even a single piece of data from it, they might unlock the remaining secrets of the weapon. "Time is running out," Grant said, turning to her team. "We don't have the luxury of waiting. Gorak is relentless, and the Sirak won't stop until they've wiped us out. We strike tonight." Wilder, her trusted lieutenant, nodded grimly. "We'll need a distraction. The Sirak's patrols are tight, and they won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets too close. If we're going to do this, we have to hit them hard and fast." Grant agreed. "We'll use the cover of their own bombing raids. When they strike, we move. This could be our only chance." The stakes were higher than ever. Grant and her team had no illusions about the risks. The enemy was vast, their technology unfathomably advanced. The chances of success were slim, but there was no turning back. Failure meant extinction. As the last of Earth's defenders prepared for their covert mission, they knew that their chances were vanishingly small. But they also knew that humanity, despite all the odds, had something the Sirak could never understand: a relentless will to survive. And that was a force the Sirak were about to learn they couldn't destroy. The night air was thick with tension as Captain Sarah Grant and her team made their way through the charred remains of Washington, D.C. The city, once teeming with life, now felt like a hollow monument to the past. The only sounds that pierced the silence were the distant thuds of bombs falling from Sirak ships in the sky. Earth was on the brink of extinction, but Grant refused to accept it. They were heading toward a hidden underground military facility, one of the last untouched by the initial Sirak assault. A network of tunnels and bunkers, lost to history, had been sealed off for decades. It was here, buried beneath the city, that Earth's best minds had once developed some of its most advanced weapons. Among them was the key to humanity's survival, the ancient weapon that could turn the tide against the Sirak. As Grant approached the entrance, she glanced back at her team. There were only a few of them left, but they were determined, each willing to risk everything for a chance at victory. Among them was Dr. Eleanor Hurst, a brilliant scientist whose knowledge of alien technology had already proven invaluable. Her expertise was what had brought them this far. "We're close," Dr. Hurst said, her voice low but urgent. "If the weapons data is still intact, we can make it work." Grant nodded. "We have to. There's no other choice." The entrance to the facility was heavily guarded, but Grant had expected as much. The Sirak, confident in their dominance, had underestimated the resilience of the human resistance. They had left the facility largely untouched, assuming there was nothing worth protecting. But they were wrong. The team moved quickly, avoiding the patrols and slipping into the shadows. As they descended deeper into the facility, they came upon a large vault, its thick metal doors barely hanging on their hinges. Grant's heart raced. This was it, the heart of humanity's last hope. Inside, the walls were lined with rows of abandoned equipment and data consoles. The air was stale, and the hum of ancient machinery echoed through the cavernous space. But at the center of the room, resting atop a pedestal, was a massive, intricately designed console, its surface glowing with faint blue lights. "This is it," Dr. Hurst breathed. "The control interface for the weapon." Grant moved toward the console, her fingers lightly brushing the surface. The glow intensified as if reacting to her touch. But there was a problem. The interface was locked, seemingly encrypted in a way that even Dr. Hurst couldn't decipher. "We need a key," Hurst muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. "A physical key. There's no way around it." Grant's mind raced. The key, of course. The data they had retrieved from the Serac supply ship had hinted at the existence of a key. It was somewhere on Earth, hidden away in one of the few remaining Serac strongholds. Without it, they could never hope to unlock the weapon's full potential. But time was running out. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the facility. The Serac had arrived. They had detected the human resistance, and they were closing in. The countdown to Earth's destruction was already beginning. "We have to move," Grant said, her voice steady despite the growing urgency. "We don't have much time. We'll get the key, and we'll finish what we started. We'll stop them." Wilder, ever loyal, stepped forward. "Where do we go, Captain?" Grant looked at the glowing interface one last time, knowing that failure meant the end for humanity. "We hit them where it hurts," she said, determination in her eyes. "We take the fight to their stronghold. We'll find the key, and we'll finish the weapon. Earth's last stand is coming." With that, the team gathered their gear and prepared to make their move. The Serac might have underestimated them before, but this time, Earth's warriors were ready to show just how dangerous they could be. The air crackled with the tension of impending doom. The Serac fleet, vast and imposing, loomed above Earth like a predator about to strike. From the command deck of Asterisk, the tyrant Asterisk, Emperor Karvik watched Earth's resistance from afar, amusement flickering in his cold eyes. The human defiance, while entertaining, had become an annoyance. They were fragile, weak, and unworthy of survival. It was time to put an end to it. "General Korek," Charvik said, his voice like the growl of a predator, "finish this. Cleanse the Earth of these pests. Show them the true might of the Serac Dominion." Korek, ever loyal and eager for the kill, bowed low. "At once, my Emperor. The humans will be crushed." With that, the Serac forces began their final assault. Their fleet unleashed a relentless barrage of missiles and energy blasts, reducing Earth's remaining cities to smoldering ruins. Entire regions were wiped off the map in a matter of moments. The humans, scattered in hiding, had no choice but to fight back with whatever they could muster. On the ground, Captain Sarah Grant's small team had just finished preparing for their dangerous mission. The facility where they had uncovered the ancient weapon was compromised. The Serac had found them, but they still had hope. They needed to find the key to unlock the weapon, and they had learned that the Serac stronghold, located in a military compound deep in the mountains, was where the key would be hidden. "Time's up," Grant said, her voice sharp. She looked over her team, every one of them ready to charge into the firestorm. "We move now. We infiltrate the stronghold, get the key, and return. We don't stop until we have it." Lieutenant Wilder checked his weapons, eyes steely. "We'll make it through. We have no choice." Grant nodded. "We don't stop. We fight until Earth is free." The team moved quickly, navigating through the desolate landscape, making their way toward the Serac stronghold. The roads were empty, abandoned by civilians who had fled or perished in the chaos. Yet even in the silence, They could hear the distant rumblings of the Cyrex war machines. The Earth had become a battlefield, with every human still alive struggling to hold on. As they approached the stronghold, the massive fortress loomed in the distance, surrounded by miles of barren wasteland. The defenses were nearly impenetrable, with high-tech energy shields and heavy artillery guarding every entrance. But the humans had learned one thing over the past few months. The Cyrex might have advanced weapons, but they were predictable. Grant's plan was simple: disable the shields, get inside, retrieve the key, and escape. Every step of the way, they would need to move fast and precise, like shadows. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. But as they neared the perimeter, the worst-case scenario unfolded. The Cyrex had already set up patrols on the ground, and it didn't take long before one of their scouts noticed movement in the shadows. "Cover!" Grant hissed, and her team scattered. The sound of blaster fire erupted in the air as they ducked for cover, exchanging fire with the Cyrex soldiers. The odds were stacked against them, but they had no other choice. The human resistance had always thrived under pressure. Wilder, his face set in a grim line, fired from behind a piece of debris, taking down 2 Cyrex soldiers before reloading. "We can't hold them off forever, Captain." "We don't need to hold them off forever," Grant said, her voice calm but forceful. "We just need to get to that stronghold and complete the mission. Move out." With every shot that rang out, the pressure mounted. The team knew the clock was ticking, and the countdown to humanity's destruction was closer than ever. But Grant's resolve burned brighter than ever before. She would not let Earth fall, not while she still had breath in her lungs. The battle outside the Cyrex stronghold raged on, echoing through the barren wasteland like a storm of destruction. Captain Sarah Grant and her team pushed forward, moving with precision, each step calculated in the face of overwhelming odds. The Cyrex patrols were everywhere, but the humans had learned to be faster, more elusive. Every foot they gained was hard-won, but they were making progress. Grant's mind was focused, her thoughts honed to a single, razor-sharp point. They had to reach the heart of the stronghold. The key to activating the ancient weapon lay within that fortress. There was no turning back now. Earth's fate was hanging in the balance, and there was no room for hesitation. Wilder's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, we're close. The main entrance is just up ahead, but it's heavily guarded." "I know," Grant replied, her tone unwavering. "We'll move in from the east side. We don't need the front gate. We need to get in, get the key, and get out. Fast." Dr. Eleanor Hurst, carrying the delicate device they had recovered from the ancient facility, looked over at Grant. "Once we get the key, we'll need to reprogram the weapon systems. I don't know how long it will take, but we can't afford to be delayed." Grant nodded. "We won't be. We'll move like shadows. Stay close and stay quiet." The team proceeded cautiously, weaving through the wreckage of a long-abandoned military vehicle graveyard. The ruins provided some cover, but it also meant they had to be even more careful. The Cyrex were becoming more alert, sensing that something was amiss. The closer they got to the stronghold, the more frequent the patrols became. As they neared the stronghold's outer walls, the heavy silence of the battlefield was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. The Cyrex patrols were too close. There was no time to waste. "Now," Grant whispered, signaling to her team. "Take them out. Quickly." The team moved in perfect synchrony. Wilder and Sergeant Allen took out the nearest patrol, moving with lethal efficiency. The others followed suit, neutralizing the guards without a sound. It was the only way they could survive: swift, silent, and deadly. Within moments, the path was clear. Grant led the charge, ducking into a narrow, shadowed passage that led into the heart of the stronghold. Inside, the facility was a maze of high-tech corridors, but the design was unmistakably alien. Cold, metallic, and sterile. The air felt thick with the remnants of the Cyrex dominance, as though the walls themselves were alive with their oppressive presence. They made their way deeper into the stronghold, evading detection as they went. The tension in the air was palpable. Every corner could hide a patrol. Every step could be their last. But Grant's focus never wavered. She could see it now, the central chamber, where the key was stored. It was just ahead. They reached the entrance to the chamber, but there was one final obstacle. A massive, energy-powered door. It was locked tight, guarded by a network of sophisticated security systems. Dr. Hurst immediately moved to the console, her fingers flying across the controls. She muttered to herself, trying to break the Cyric encryption. "This is it," Hurst said, her voice tense. "Almost there. Just a few more seconds." Suddenly, the sound of a loud alarm echoed through the stronghold. They had been detected. "Move," Grant shouted. With seconds to spare, the door slid open, revealing the key, a small, yet intricately designed object, glowing with a soft, pulsating light. It was the key that would activate the weapon that could end the Cyric's reign of terror. Grant snatched it up, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Let's get out of here." The countdown had begun, but the mission wasn't over yet. The Cyrac were closing in, and Earth's survival depended on their ability to escape with the key and complete the final phase of the weapon's activation. The moment Grant gripped the key, the hum of the alarm reverberated through the stronghold like a death knell. The Cyrac had detected them, and there was no time to waste. They had the key, but the hardest part was yet to come, escaping alive. "Move out," Grant shouted, her voice a command that cut through the chaos. "We've got what we came for. Now we get out, fast." The team didn't hesitate. They sprinted down the narrow corridor, their footsteps muffled by the thick walls of the stronghold. Every instinct screamed at them to move faster, but there was no guarantee they'd make it. They had what they needed, but escaping would require more than just luck. It would take every ounce of skill, every bit of training they had left. Behind them, the sound of Cyrac soldiers charging through the hallways echoed like thunder. The aliens were relentless, their war machines powered by advanced technology and fueled by blind hatred for humanity. Grant's team, though skilled, was vastly outnumbered. They would need to outthink their enemies if they were to survive. "Wilder, take point," Grant ordered as they approached a junction in the hall. "Alan, cover us from behind." Lieutenant Wilder nodded, his pulse steady even as adrenaline surged through him. He moved forward, his weapon raised, scanning every corner for signs of movement. The rest of the team followed closely, their weapons ready, their senses heightened. They turned a corner, only to be met with the sight of a small squad of Cyrac soldiers. There was no time for subtlety now. "Fire," Grant barked. The team opened fire in perfect synchronization, the sharp crack of their weapons cutting through the air. Wilder dropped 2 soldiers with precise shots to their chests, while Alan provided cover, his heavy rifle suppressing the remaining enemy troops. The Cyrac retaliated, but their shots went wide, their soldiers overwhelmed by the sheer speed and accuracy of the human resistance. "Clear," Wilder shouted, signaling to the team. Grant motioned for them to keep moving. They couldn't afford to linger. Each second spent in the stronghold increased their chances of being overwhelmed. They continued their run, weaving through the complex until they reached the access tunnel that led outside. Just as they reached the entrance, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The Cyrac had deployed reinforcements, and they were closing in fast. There was no escape route now. They were boxed in. "We need to hold this position," Grant ordered. "Get to the tunnel entrance. Hold them off." The team quickly took positions behind the walls of the tunnel entrance, their weapons ready. The sound of Cyrac footsteps grew louder, closer. In the distance, they could see the red glow of energy weapons charging. Grant's heart raced. They were nearly there, almost to the surface. But if they couldn't break through, all their efforts would have been for nothing. She wasn't about to let that happen. "On my mark, we move out," she called, her voice calm but intense. "Hold your fire until they're in range." The seconds felt like hours. The enemy soldiers drew closer, their heavy boots thudding against the floor. Grant's fingers tightened around her weapon, her grip steady. The moment they crossed the threshold of the tunnel entrance, she would give the order to fire. It would have to be fast, precise, and unrelenting. The first wave of Serac soldiers appeared in the corridor, their weapons raised. Grant didn't hesitate. "Now," she commanded. The team unleashed a volley of fire, the sound deafening in the confined space. The Serac soldiers fell back, temporarily disoriented by the ferocity of the human assault. It was enough to give Grant and her team the opening they needed. They sprinted into the tunnel, just as the enemy regrouped. "Go, go, go," Grant shouted, urging her team forward. With the Serac in pursuit, the team dashed toward the surface. The tunnel stretched on, narrow and winding, but it offered a small measure of safety. The light from outside grew brighter as they neared the exit. They were so close, too close to fail now. But the Serac were relentless, and they weren't going to give up without a fight. The exit of the tunnel loomed ahead, a sliver of light growing larger with every step. Captain Sarah Grant pushed forward. Her breath ragged from the sprint, but her focus never wavered. The rest of the team was close behind, but the Serac were closing in fast. The faint sound of their boots echoed behind them, a constant reminder that failure wasn't an option. They had come too far to be caught now. "Almost there," Grant called over her shoulder, her voice tight with determination. But just as they reached the mouth of the tunnel, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The Serac had deployed their heavy artillery. From the shadows, enormous figures emerged, Serac war machines, towering walkers designed to crush anything in their path. The machines' mechanical legs dug into the ground, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. "Ambush," Lieutenant Wilder shouted, his voice a mix of surprise and fear. Grant didn't hesitate. "Get to cover, now." The team scrambled for safety, diving behind the rocky outcroppings and broken structures around the tunnel entrance. The first wave of blasts from the walkers slammed into the earth, sending shockwaves through the air and knocking the team off balance. "Return fire," Grant ordered. "We don't stop until we clear the path." Wilder and Allen immediately opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkened landscape as they aimed for the walkers' weak points, joints, power cores, anywhere they could inflict damage. The Serac walkers retaliated, their massive energy weapons sending streams of deadly plasma toward the humans. But despite their superior technology, the Serac underestimated humanity's resolve. Grant's team was small, but they were relentless. As the explosions rained down around them, the team's focus sharpened. Each member moved with purpose, ducking behind cover, reloading, and taking precise shots. "We're not going to win this with guns alone," Grant muttered, scanning the battlefield for a weakness. Her mind raced, searching for an opening. And then it clicked. "The key," Grant said, her voice rising with the realization. "We need to activate the weapon now. It's our only shot." Dr. Hurst, already battered from the earlier skirmishes, nodded. She was cradling the key, the last hope for humanity, in her arms. "We've got to get to the control panel. It's in the ruins of the old power station, just up the hill." Grant looked over at her team. "We move now. Cover Hurst while she gets to the panel. We make our stand there. This is it." Without waiting for any objections, Grant led the charge. They ran through the firestorm, each step a struggle to stay alive. Every few seconds, another explosion rocked the ground, but the team pushed forward. It felt as though the entire Serac fleet was closing in on them, and with every step, the weight of their mission seemed to grow heavier. The power station was just ahead, a dilapidated structure now being used by the Serac as a command post. But it didn't matter how fortified it was. It was their only chance. The team made a final sprint toward the building, their bodies already worn from the constant combat. "Get to the control panel," Grant shouted, urging Hurst forward. As they reached the station, Wilder and Allen provided cover, their weapons spewing fire toward the oncoming Serac forces. Grant and Hurst dashed into the building, finding the control panel surrounded by a maze of alien technology. "Cover me," Dr. Hurst said, her voice shaking with the strain. "I'll start the sequence." Outside, the battle intensified. The walkers' blasts were growing more concentrated, their aim true. Grant gritted her teeth and turned to face the oncoming onslaught. She had seen enough. They were ready. The time for hesitation was over. "Activate the weapon, Hurst," Grant yelled. "Do it now." With the final command, Hurst pressed a sequence of buttons on the console, the hum of the weapon growing louder, the sound of power surging through the system. The earth shook again, but this time, it wasn't from the Serac walkers. It was the beginning of the end. The hum of the ancient weapon's activation was deafening, a low, pulsating sound that vibrated through the ground beneath Grant's feet. She stood just outside the control room, watching the chaos unfold as the Serac walkers, now focused on the power station, pushed forward relentlessly. The weapon was powering up, but they weren't done yet. Not by a long shot. "Keep them off, Hurst," Grant shouted, turning to face the rest of the team. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and burning debris. Every second felt like a lifetime. Wilder, ever steady, was the first to respond, his rifle already aimed at an advancing walker. He fired with precision, each shot aimed at the vulnerable joints of the massive machine. The walker staggered, its legs giving out under the onslaught, but it wasn't enough to stop the rest of them. The Serac were coming at them from all sides now, their numbers overwhelming. "We can't hold them forever," Wilder called, gritting his teeth. Grant's heart raced. Hurst was almost there. She had to be. There was no time for second chances. "Just a little longer, Hurst," Grant yelled, trying to push through the suffocating pressure. "We're almost there." Dr. Hurst, sweat dripping down her face, was hunched over the control panel, typing furiously. The light from the weapon's core bathed her in an eerie blue glow, but her expression remained focused. The countdown was nearing its final moments, and the weight of the world was pressing down on her shoulders. "Almost there," Hurst muttered under her breath, her voice a whisper of hope. But the sound of approaching footsteps told a different story. The Serac were closing in, and fast. "Cover her," Grant ordered. The team fought with everything they had. Surgeon Allen, who had been on the front line since the beginning, took aim and fired a series of devastating shots at the oncoming walkers. They staggered, but there were too many. It was like fighting an unstoppable tide. Yet Allen's resolve never wavered. He fired again and again, holding the line for as long as he could. Suddenly, the ground shook violently as one of the walkers fired a devastating energy beam directly at the power station. The building rocked on its foundations, and the hum of the weapon faltered, then sputtered. Hurst gasped and pulled back from the console, her hands shaking. "No, no, no," she breathed, trying to reconnect the system. Grant's eyes widened in horror. If the power station went down, they would lose the weapon and the last chance for Earth's survival. "Wilder, keep them off, Hurst," Grant shouted, sprinting toward the control room. "Allen, help me cover the perimeter." Without hesitation, Wilder leaped into action, firing a steady stream of shots toward the walkers, trying to keep them at bay. But the intensity of the fire from the Serac war machines made it clear that they were running out of time. Grant ran to Hurst's side, her mind working in overdrive. "What happened?" she asked, scanning the console. "The core's been damaged," Hurst said, her voice shaky but determined. "I need a few more seconds to reroute the power." "Do it," Grant said firmly. "We don't have a few seconds." As Grant turned to face the advancing walkers, she realized that this would be their last stand. They either activated the weapon and ended this war, or Earth would fall, and humanity's flame would be snuffed out forever. With a deep breath, Grant steadied her weapon and opened fire. The first walker fell to the ground with a deafening crash, but others quickly took its place. The team was outgunned, outnumbered, and running on empty, but they fought on, driven by the weight of their mission and the hope that, just maybe, they could turn the tide. And then, with a sudden flare of light, the weapon roared to life. The ground rumbled as energy surged from the power station, coursing through the core and spiraling into the atmosphere. The walkers paused for a split second, seemingly unsure of what was happening. But then the full force of the weapon was unleashed. A massive shockwave erupted, decimating the walkers in an instant. The blinding light of the blast consumed everything in its path. Serac ships, war machines, and soldiers were obliterated in the blink of an eye. Grant shielded her eyes from the blinding light, feeling the shockwave push her to her knees. When the light faded, there was nothing left but silence. The war machines, the soldiers, everything was gone. They had done it. Earth had won. The victory, however, came at a great cost. As Grant looked around at her team, she saw the exhaustion and devastation etched into their faces. The fight was over, but the scars of this war would remain. Hurst looked up at her, tears in her eyes, but a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "We did it," she whispered. Grant nodded, her voice quiet but resolute. "Yes, we did." But even as she spoke, her heart was heavy with the knowledge that the battle had been hard won. There would be no going back to the world they once knew. The future was uncertain, but for now, humanity had survived. And that, for Grant, was enough.